Hi again. This is one of the lesser-known books of J.F. Rutherford, Enemies, published in 1937. During that period, Rutherford, in pretty much all of his books, was railing against the powers which, of course, he didn't at that point relate to Romans 13. They were business, big business, which he had a real tirade against over and over again during the late 20s and 30s. And the Roman Catholic Church, all churches really, but the Roman Catholic Church took it on the chin over and over again. As in this chapter, the chapter is called the Song of the Harlot. And who is the harlot? Well, I think you'll get a sense of it from this. This book, by the way, contains a prophecy, which we'll deal with right now, that is little known. I mean, most of us, if we're ex-witnesses, have a catalog in our head by now of the false prophecies involving dates. Well, this is not a date prophecy, but it is pretty explicit. Rutherford says on page 289, during the past few years, the Fascists and Nazis have grown at a tremendous speed, thus showing that the inhabitants of the earth are made drunk with the Roman Catholic hierarchy's lying, poisonous doctrines, her wine, and the fornication and drunkenness continue to increase. Then he quotes Revelation 18:3, for all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. So at this point in time, the Watchtower is still kind of hanging on to the original concept they had of who the harlot was. The Roman Catholic Church was Barber and Russell's teaching, and gradually it widened to become all religion, all Protestantism, and then all religion. And then he makes the connection with the eighth king that's mentioned in Revelation 17, this eighth king that comes after the 7 heads on the beast. And he says the beast was and is not during the World War. Even he is the 8th world power. And then he links that world power to the League of Nations, which had come into being after World War I, which of course he couldn't foresee that itself would go into the abyss and would, according to the modern understanding, then have to rise again as the United Nations. But there's no time in Rutherford's schedule for that development. He goes on in the next page talking about Britain and America and their future and how they are going to be influenced by these developments in Europe, the fascist states, particularly Nazism. He says, the United States is not supposed to be a member of the League of Nations, but the prophecy in the Revised Version says she shall play the harlot with all the kingdoms of the world upon the face of the earth, and this necessarily includes the United States of America. It is well known by every person in America who really thinks that the determination of the Roman Catholic hierarchy is to gain control of the United States and make it a government similar to that of Germany and Italy. Just preceding the election in the United States in 1936, Cardinal Pacelli, Papal Secretary of State in the Vatican, visited the United States, and the result was that practically every Roman Catholic in the United States voted for Mr. Roosevelt, the man who had said previously that diplomatic relationship would be established with the Vatican as soon as the American people could be brought around to it. Then he has a subhead, Britain and America. No one on earth can tell exactly what will come to pass, but those devoted to the Lord, and according to the divine rule of applying the well-known facts to God's prophecy, now in course of fulfillment, can well reach a reasonable conclusion as to what shall come to pass. The question is, will Great Britain and America become fascist under the dominating control of the Roman Catholic hierarchy? The scriptures and the facts appear to fully support that conclusion. And then again on page 292, King Edward VIII had just abdicated, so here's Rutherford's comment on that and the significance of it. What was the real inducement that caused King Edward VIII to abdicate may be better understood in the near future. That fascism now is gaining at an alarming rate in Britain, there is not the slightest doubt. And also the fascists and Nazis are rapidly increasing in the United States. The Roman Catholic hierarchy is confident of putting to silence through its instruments everything and every activity that exposes the crookedness of the hierarchy and makes known Jehovah God's purpose. It is nighttime, so far as most of the people are concerned, and the old whore while the people slumber, moves forward with greater confidence. A complete fulfillment of the prophecy draws nigh. God caused the Apostle Paul to write authoritatively concerning this very time, to wit, "But of the times and the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I write unto you, for you yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. For when they shall say, Peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape." 1 Thessalonians 5, 1-3. Rutherford then comments, Jehovah is now carrying on his strange work, which serves to enlighten the people of good will and to show them the only way of escape. And only those who find that way will escape. The old whore sitting upon the back of the beast may soon be expected to say, "Peace and safety. We have silenced all opponents." Then Jehovah's strange act will begin, and sudden destruction comes upon her as travail upon a woman with child. Needless to say, this did not transpire, and 2 years later the Western world entered into war with these very fascist elements. So all of this did not happen, and yet that cry of peace and safety goes on being used by the Watchtower generation after generation to alarm Jehovah's Witnesses to think the day is upon them. Rutherford was not vindicated, therefore, even though in his book, and he died after writing the book Children in 1941, he died a few months after that. All of his expectations in respect to what would happen politically and militarily were disappointed, and of course the time element. They continued to exist, that when the war did break out, that there would only be months until the saints were back. They were still hanging on to that idea that that house in San Diego that was originally built, they said, for the princes who would return shortly back in the late 20s, that house would still be used when the princes would return in the period that is now 80 years distant, the period when Rutherford was writing the book Children, and then died, and then they published a book, The New World, in which they told the story of the significance of that house in San Diego again. Hope to do a video on that. I'll put a link into Peace and Security, this very passage in Thessalonians that he cites here. We've done a series of videos that puts that peace and safety reference in the context of chapters 3 through 5 in Thessalonians. So I'll put the link to the first one of those videos on screen. See you next time.